Hi, this is Rod Santomassimo, and welcome to the Massimo Show. The objective of the Massimo Show is to share how you can maximize your personal, professional margin. That's right. Let's make more money in less time. Let's turn chaos into clarity, confusion into confidence, and income into real wealth. Along with sharing my insight on how I grew a multi-million-dollar professional business, we're going to bring you the expert advice from a variety of authors, consultants, and thought leaders who will provide the tools you need to maximize your own personal and professional margin. Welcome to the Massimo Show. Hello and welcome to the Massimo Show. And wow, what a guest we have today. Imagine creating more sales in your business and potentially not spending more on your marketing dollars. Is that possible? Well, our guest, Bill Cates, not only says it is possible, he's proven it's possible. Who is Bill Cates? Bill is an internationally recognized expert and keynote speaking about attracting more high-level clients through client engagements, referrals, and introduction. He's also an author. He's written several books, Beyond Referrals, Don't Keep Me a Secret, Referrals Now, and the book I was reading this morning, Radical Relevance. Bill, thank you so much for joining us at the Massimo Show.
My pleasure, Rod. Great to be here.
Wow, what a pleasure it is for us, this expert in referrals. That's your gig. So as we know, our audience knows, we're going to break this down to three parts. First, let's get to know Bill, right? Why Bill? Why should we listen? And then Bill's going to share with you exactly some things you could be doing to grow your business and not spend marketing dollars. And last but not least, Bill's gonna give us the inside view of his business, because you're all thinking, has Bill got such a successful business? We're gonna ask him that. He's gonna share that with you as well. So Bill, you ready to get started?
I am ready.
Okay. Bill, first I gotta ask, where are you located today?
I am in Annapolis, Maryland. I moved here about 1.5 years ago. Love it.
Love it. Beautiful, beautiful city. So let's talk about you, and I'm gonna take you way back. Okay.
Oh boy. Bill,
the preteen teenager. Where were you living? Where were you living? And what were some of your passions? Can you remember that?
You should say, where was I getting in trouble? Actually, I was a pretty good kid, except for in class. I almost got kicked off the basketball team because I acted out in class a lot. But so I was born in Washington, D.C. I grew up in the suburbs in an area called Silver Spring, Maryland. I went to high school there. I went to the University of Maryland. I was a bit of a musician, drummer in a rock and roll band. I turned professional after graduating college for a little while. So I played a lot of music, did a little drama, that sort of stuff. You know, kind of an all-American kid, I guess.
All-American kid, drummer in a rock and roll band. I love it. I love it. Here's this all-American kid, drummer, basketball player, a Terp from the University of Maryland. So tell us about the business side now. When did you get in the business? What did you do initially before you grew your own business?
It was a long, winding route, as it is for a lot of people. I graduated, went to graduate school, then became a drummer in a band for a while. We toured the country a little bit, so we were fairly successful, nothing anybody's heard of, but I did an assessment of my talent, and I realized that I would probably play Holiday Inns the rest of my life if I was lucky. And so I said, all right, we got to do something else here, Bill. And I went to work actually for American Airlines for a while in customer service, but I got the itch to own my own business. And finally, I started a book publishing company, actually a couple of book publishing companies. We had some specialty books in very specific areas. I talk about the whole story actually in my book, Radical Relevance. I reveal kind of the whole story for the first time. I built that. I eventually sold both of those companies in 1989 and 1990, and then got into this business that I'm in now in terms of speaking, training, writing. I learned a lot in running those businesses, and now I just love continuing to learn and to teach what I learn. I use it, I teach it, and it's my passion. And I'll probably be doing this to the day I die.
Okay, Bill, so you went from college to touring as a drummer, realized maybe the Holiday Inn's not where you want to spend most of your time. So you decide, I'm going to start these companies, and you went to a book publishing company. As a drummer, become a book publisher.
So here's what happened. I got wind of an opportunity, actually, and that is I met this woman who had this, of all things, a strawberry cookbook, and she was selling it in Pick Your Own Strawberry Farms. And how I had knowledge of that's a long story too. But what happened essentially is she kind of stole all my ideas and I didn't get compensated for it. I'm thinking, I could do this and I could do better than her. So I identified 1,500 pick your own strawberry farms around the country. And I got an author to write a strawberry cookbook and I started selling it to these farmers. And the first year I sold about 15,000 copies of the book. I go, okay, this is interesting. And just in my spare time, I was doing this. But strawberry season, very short season. So I decided to do an apple cookbook, longer season. I started selling those. And then I did a honey cookbook and a vegetable cookbook. And it was this niche really to farmers mostly. And I was doing like 80,000 copies a year of these books. And and then I started producing other cookbooks that I sold in different kinds of kitchen stores and gourmet shops and grocery stores. We had spinner racks in grocery stores. And then I started doing specialty cookbooks for equipment manufacturers. I did a book for Weber Grills. I did a book for a smoker company. I did a cookie cookbook for American greeting cards. And so I created this niche of smaller books. They weren't large books, but cookbooks. And I didn't know much about cooking, mind you.
About to ask.
Yeah, I mean, the fun part was I got courted by all these authors who wanted to write books for my publishing company. And so they'd treat me to these incredible feasts. I remember I had an Italian couple, actually, just almost literally off the boat. They didn't speak English, almost no English. So I brought an Italian friend of mine and he would interpret the entire time we were doing this, and it was a great time. But I never aspired to be a book publisher, particularly in the cooking area. So I eventually built the business to a point where it was saleable. It had a lot of goodwill, had a lot of good sales. It was sustainable. Someone could take it over and transfer it. And so that's what I did. I sold that business in 89. And also in the mix of that, I found another partner for another publishing company. We were called Corkscrew Press at the time. And we came out with the official single man's cookbook, hysterical, and then followed up by the official single woman's cookbook. And we sold, several 100,000 copies of both books in several years. And again, the partner was fine, but I didn't really want to be in partnership with him. So I sold my business to the rest of the business to him.
Okay, hold on. I got to stop you there because it's an incredible message for our audience, regardless of what you're doing. The real success I see there, Bill, from your perspective, was you identified a need, you tested something, identified a need, and then more specifically, a target audience, aligning with target audiences, finding a niche, fulfilling that niche. Think about it, folks. Selling cookbooks to strawberry farmers that they're going to put up on their patios or wherever their porches and say, hey, yeah, while you're picking our strawberries, buy this cookbook. I mean, what an amazing alignment, it's just synergy to do that throughout again and again. So just think to yourself, your target audience, everyone out there, who's your target audience? What is the message to resonate with them? Even if they don't speak English, find someone that can translate, obviously in Italian.
Right.
But what is it to them that you can sell your goods or services? Wow, what a powerful lesson there, Bill. That's awesome.
And that's part of the message of my book, Radical Relevance. It's having the right product or the right offer to the right market, to the right person in that market, where the market is the target, but then we have the bullseye in the market, the right person, the right offer at the right time, with the right messaging. All of the right things come together. And that really is that radical relevance. That is a spot on message to the right person at the right time in the right way. And you're right, that story does illustrate one example of how to do that.
Okay, so before we get to the book and the lessons in the book, let me ask you, how did you go from being a book publisher to now this international best-selling author, speaker, and really focusing on this message? Your message is you're known as a referral coach, right? Mm-hmm. So how did you create that new niche? Not the Apple cookbook guy, but the referral coach. How did that come about?
I'm a liberal arts major, and they say that liberal arts majors often make good entrepreneurs because they learn how to learn. And so that's one thing I've learned is how to learn, and also how to teach, which I guess my mother was a teacher, so maybe it's in my genes. But so what happened is I sold both businesses within a short period of time of each other. And I was looking for the next thing to do. I had some money. I wasn't in a hurry. And I was helping a few companies, just doing a little side consulting with their sales and marketing. And then finally, a buddy of mine, a guy named Frank Ingo, says, Bill, you should be a professional speaker, trainer, author. You'd be really good at that world. And I go, okay, what's that? Because I didn't really know much about that. I didn't work in businesses where I saw a lot of speakers and conferences and that sort of stuff. And so I started hanging out at the National Speakers Association. Some of your guests on your podcast are also members of that association. And it's people who do more than just speak. Mm-hmm. Right? We're not just talking heads, if you will. Maybe some folks are. But there's usually more depth to that. And so I started writing and speaking, and I started in the printing industry because I knew that industry, right? Sometimes when you start a business, you want to start where you know, what your natural market is. And so that's where I started. But that industry has very low margins. It wasn't taking me where I wanted to go. So then I started expanding a little bit, and I was looking for a clear vision on a book I wanted to write. A lot of people won't take any action until they're crystal clear on where they want to go. And I get that, but sometimes we have to act anyway, waiting for the clarity to come. And that's what I was doing. So finally, I was actually listening to some audio CDs. Most of the folks listening to this will be old enough to remember audio CDs. And there was a guy talking about referrals. And I was thinking, I like this, but I'd teach it this way. I'd say this, I'd do that. Within a month's time, I knew I was going to write my first book on that. And it took me about a year to write and teach and write and teach and write and teach and finally get the book out. Came out in 1996 was the first one. And then from there, I found that professional services was the best market, the best niche. So commercial real estate agents, consultants, financial advisors, banking, just anybody who deals in terms of clients and they're kind of consultative in their approach and not transactional are people that I do a great job for. So that's kind of the evolution of the business. And I love it because I get to learn, I get to try it out for my own business, and I get to teach it to others. And it's a rewarding place to be.
That's fantastic. We can't wait to continue this journey. So when we come back for our next session with Mr. Bill Cates, we're going to talk about this idea of referrals and growing your business without spending marketing dollars. Think about that. As well as how did Bill grow his business, his personal business, where now he has that professional margin and personal margin in his life. So stay tuned, come back. This is Rod Santomassimo with The Massimo Show. Hey, this is Rod Santomassimo, and we always tell our coaching clients that knowing isn't doing. That's right. Don't kid yourself. In fact, in my new book, Don't Kid Yourself, Knowing Isn't Doing, Build the Business and Life You Desire, I lay out many of our Massimo methods that we share with our clients to help them transform their lives. My new book, Knowing Isn't Doing, is going through a soft launch that will happen in March of 2020, and then a big national launch in September 2020. For more information, check out knowingisn'tdoing.com. Hey, this is Rod Santomassimo, back with the Massimo Show and back with our special guest, Bill Cates, the referral coach. And now it's to dive into the methodology of getting referrals. So, Bill, let's start. Let's talk about how you built this practice and tell us about this idea, this concept, this approach of securing referrals. Help us there.
Yeah, so you've mentioned a couple of times how to increase revenue without increasing your marketing budget. I do that by helping people multiply their best clients, right? That's it. Who are your best clients? How do you multiply those people? It doesn't cost any money to do that. In fact, I was working with one insurance company based in Texas, a smaller company, but they were spending $450,000 a year on a call center to help generate leads for their reps. And they decided they wanted to try to install a referral culture, which is what I try to do, create a real culture within a firm if I can. So we did that. We did the training, did all the thinking adjustments and perspectives and whatnot. And about 2 years after that, they were able to fire their telemarketing firm. So they immediately saved $450,000 a year in telemarketing costs. And the year after that, they had their best year of sales ever. So that's a concrete example of how you can increase your revenue without increasing your marketing expenses and therefore increase your profits, right? So when I first got hired, most people hired me to teach their sales reps, their consultants, their advisors how to ask for referrals without looking like an over-aggressive life insurance agent. A lot of the methodologies were very aggressive. No one wanted to look like that. So I started doing that, and we were having some success. And I saw some people struggling because I realized they weren't referable in the first place. They were too transactional. They weren't attending to all aspects of the relationship necessary to become referable, to be able to generate referrals without asking. And if they did ask, to have a receptive audience, right? And so then we did that. And then, slowly the do not call regulations come into play and just all the ways it's so hard to reach people. Whether it's B2B or B2C, it's hard to reach people these days. And so what I learned and started teaching even more so than ever before was the concept of not just referrals, but introductions, making sure you actually get introduced to these people, connected to these people, So we started emphasizing that. Now, just to kind of bring this all home, so we know that referrals and introductions work because of borrowed trust. We borrow the trust in one relationship long enough to earn our own trust in a new relationship, right? And that borrowed trust will take us so far, but at some point we have to start doing our own work right there. We have to talk about what we do in a way that resonates with that prospect, that's relevant to them, that compels them to take the next step, whatever that next step is we want them to take. And that's where the book Radical Relevance comes into play, because the fastest way to relevance with anyone is to get introduced to them by someone they already trust, right? So we know that, but there's more to it than that. And that's how we talk about our value, how we message our value, how we move people to action is what Radical Relevance is about. So that's kind of the evolution of my business.
So help the audience out there. They're saying, okay, there's a lot of great concepts there. And I understand that the borrowed trust, right? Are you referable? Can you share one tactic that they can actually apply today to say, you know what, I know it's never as easy, guys. And believe me, we get asked this question all the time. But is there one tactic you can say, look, when asking for referrals, try this or do this? Any suggestion there, Bill?
Yeah, the most important thing I've been teaching for 25 years plus on this is something I call a value discussion or a value check-in. What this simply is, Rod, is just checking in with prospects and clients at different points along the way to make sure that they're seeing the value, that we're meeting or exceeding their expectations. Most businesses don't check in enough. And what we know is that there's a low correlation between satisfied clients and the giving of referrals. What we need to create is engaged clients, people who feel good about our value and also feel good about us. And one of the ways to do that is to check in and say, Rod, we've been through quite a process at this point. How do you feel about what we've done so far? Anything not work that we should be aware of? What has worked? Just being that openness to checking in on a regular basis. That's the precursor. That's the beginning step to my methodology of asking for introductions. But even if you don't ask for introductions, I found people who get them without even asking, just from this value discussion, this value check-in. It solidifies the relationship. It builds that human connection there. Of all the things I teach, that's without question the most important.
Yeah. And as our audience knows, my number one quote and process and theory is don't kid yourself, KID, knowing isn't doing. In fact, my audience knows that's my next book coming out, Knowing Isn't Doing. And look, it sounds like a great concept, Bill, the idea of these value check-ins. Yeah. Hey, folks, it's an amazing concept. Our team does it. And it's amazing the referrals we get when we have these value check-ins. So yeah, do we read the book? Yeah. Do we apply the process? Yes. You got to do what Bill's suggesting. Now, Bill, I'm going to give you one objection. Okay. I want to see how you handle this objection.
Oh boy. Okay.
We get this all the time. We get it from our clients who are originally they were all in the commercial real estate space, and that's growing, but they would tell us, why would I give you a referral to a competitor or a colleague? Because, I'm in a dog-eat-dog world. And of course, that perspective is one of a lack of abundance, right? And that's really not we live by. But when you get those objections, well, these guys won't give me referrals. There are other insurance agents or there are other attorneys, and I'll compete against those guys. Bill, you are my secret sauce. I can't give that away, right?
Well, the good news, Rod, is that most people don't think that way, especially most small business owners, because they've had to make referrals work for them. Most of them, they're in their industry association or they're in study groups or they have colleagues and they compare notes and they share resources. Most people in the business world are in that camp, thank goodness. Now, if I run into someone, and that does happen sometimes, it's like you're asking me to do your work for you, or why should I do, what's in it for me to introduce you?
Absolutely.
Right? And occasionally you do get that. So first of all, my formula, if you will, or my approach to any kind of objection, no matter who it's coming from and what part of my life, is to first try to understand the objection, explore the objection, right? So if in that case, I'd probably say, well, it sounds like you want to be pretty careful. If you ever introduce me to anybody, you'd want to be careful who that would be, right? Because you don't want to feed your competitors with me as a resource. Is that what I'm hearing? And then you'd explain a little more. And there's usually an emotionality about that. So I'm kind of getting through that. And I'll say, and look, tell you what, let's not talk about any of your competitors. Let's not worry about those. I know you have other business associates. You have relationships with people who supply you with your business, et cetera. It's going to depend on the context. Could we explore that? We won't touch that area, I promise, but you've seen the value of the work I do, and I'm trying to bring this value to other folks. Would you be open to helping me help other folks? And that's all we're really asking for, is we're asking for help in helping others. And we don't do this, by the way, unless we know we have a satisfied client, unless we know or I should say engaged client, unless that value discussion has brought out some good stuff, right? That's why that's the first step in this conversation. So I'm only going to be asking people who I know really do see the value and feel good about it. Also, another technique, if you will, or tactic, is when you do ask for introductions, the best way to do this is to come with a specific person in mind. So if I said to you, Rod, how do you feel about introducing me to George Smith? I know you know George, you've talked about him a few times, right? So now I know this person's a colleague, and even if he may be a friendly competitor of yours, and you may be fine with that, or you may not be. But that gets the conversation started. So that's in a nutshell.
That's a great point, Bill. Thank you so much for that. Folks, listen, referrals. Think of referrals, the power of referrals, not spending more on marketing, looking at specific tactics, right? Being referable, having that trust, that borrowed trust, right? Having that value proposition. And then I love this one, what Bill just shared with us is, look, when you ask referral, wouldn't it be easier for you and for the receiver to say, hey, I really want to get introduced to Joe Black or George Smith or Betty, whatever, knowing who, as opposed to, hey, who do you know that can help me? Yeah, that's tough.
Throwing up in the whole universe, say, who do you know we can help? It usually fizzles. It usually doesn't go anywhere. But if I said to you, Rod, let's hoping we could brainstorm for a minute, see if we can identify a couple of folks that you think at least should be aware of the service I bring and the relationships that I create. I have a couple ideas, some folks you've mentioned in the past. Can I run it by you to see what you think? You're going to be curious, at least, to wonder who I'm thinking about. And that's a more confident place to come from. It's more specific. How do you feel about introducing me to so-and-so? And most people will be happy to do that. It's these broad, unending questions that don't go anywhere. We're trying to get our clients to picture people in their mind's eye. And the more we learn about them, the easier this becomes.
Folks, I have to apply what you're hearing here. It's just so incredible. Growing your business is not that difficult when you do the right things. It's just not. So, Bill, let's transition to you. Let's go back to you, right? Not the rock and roll, hard rock, Holiday Inn drummer set guy.
Oh, man.
Right? I'm just hoping I'm not envisioning leather pants and long hair. I don't know. I don't think of what kind of music you were playing.
Not leather pants, but I did have longer hair, yes.
So let's get to the new Bill, right? Today's Bill. Bill, you've built this incredible personal practice, and people take that for granted. So number one, how many years have you been the referral coach?
25 years.
25 years. Folks, that's incredible in itself. And I've been the Massimo group now for 11 years. I can't imagine doubling that plus, have that kind of tenure. That's awesome, Bill. So let's get to it then. You built your practice. You're starting out. How did you initially get clients? When you're starting out, you knew some folks. Was it from a referral standpoint? And what was the value prop? So how did you build your business initially?
Yeah, a lot of referrals, obviously, people I knew in different industries. And to be honest, I did make some cold calls. In fact, I'm going to date myself big time here, but it was at the time when we didn't have cell phones. We had banks of pay phones at airports. And we had little calling cards where we dial an 800 number and then we put in our number and then we get through, right? And then if we hung up with that person, if we hit a certain digit or the pound sign or whatever, then we didn't have to re-enter the card number, right? So I would be cold calling from payphone banks and airports to sales managers and different types of companies. And invariably what would happen is there'd be the loudspeaker on the airport would go off and they'd say, "Are you calling me from an airport?" I go, "Yeah." "I'm sorry about the noise." "You're cold calling me from an airport?" I go, "Well, yeah." "All right. You're hired. If you're willing to do that, and you probably have some." So I don't make cold calls anymore, although I do believe that we should always feel good about the value that we bring and be willing to call someone that we think we can bring value to. So what I usually do is I make warm cold calls. Is I'll learn about these people and then I'll go on LinkedIn and I'll see if there's anybody who can introduce me to them. And if I just can't get an introduction, I will reach out, but I'll reach out in a warmer way. I've done some research about them. I know where they went to school. I know where they live, things like that. And so it's certainly a lot warmer. And then eventually what happened for me is I created a reputation. Because I have a strong reputation in financial services and a few other professional service industries, the business started coming to me. I can't get complacent. I have to always be stirring the pot a little bit. I can't just wait for all of it to come to me because it might not be enough or it might not be all the right business.
Right ones. Talk about that a little bit. So if I can, I'm going to break this down to 5 sections and one you answered already. We believe, and when we preach, look, every company, whether it's a solopreneur like yourself, or maybe it's not, we'll talk about that, or Amazon.com, you got 5 basic divisions in your operation you've got to handle. One is sales, and your sales division is really handled by your referral network and your referral practice, correct?
And the reputation I've established. Yes.
And the reputation. Number 2, marketing. So how do you market your professional practice?
The marketing is really sustaining the reputation. For me, it's speaking at certain key conferences within certain industries. It's my blog, it's the newsletter I put out to our list, all the kind of standard things, creating a place on LinkedIn. I mean, LinkedIn does turn the business for me from time to time. So it's just the reputation building and maintenance. That is my marketing.
It's funny, you said the standard things, and it's not the standard things for some people, or a lot of people. A robust LinkedIn profile, for example, is a major element, and most people don't have one that sells, quite frankly. You're doing a newsletter. Most people don't have that, right? Yeah, sure, you have your reputation. You're doing your blog. Not everyone blogs or vlogs or whatever. They just don't. So you do have, and now are you running your own marketing, or do you have a team behind you that runs the marketing?
We run pretty lean, but I do have a team. I have 2 people that work for me. One is my program manager, and she handles almost everything in terms of getting me to places and helping me book speaking engagements and interfacing with our clients in different ways. And then I have a director of digital marketing, and she helps with the strategizing, creating the right strategies, and then actually implementing some of the programs. So there's really 3 of us. Now I outsource some of my things that I used to have internally, but now I've outsourced to virtual folks. But we run pretty lean.
So are those 2 people, in fact, employees of your company?
Yes, they're both employees. Yes.
Okay. I have those roles as well as 30 other roles in my company, but everyone in our company is an independent contractor and has specific roles and no management. But that's just want everyone to understand, people are always frightened by the employee label. I can't afford it. I don't want to manage it. Not everything has to be employee. And that's what we're trying to share with you here. Okay.
Well,
so now
I can't not afford it either, because they free you up to do what you should be doing.
Oh, we also agree with you. In fact, I don't know if you read Jack Daly's Hyper Sales Growth. My goal, Bill, with every book, if I could just get one sentence, by the way, from your book, I got multiple sentences, but if I get one sentence of any book that would change the trajectory of my business, it was worth it. And Jack Daly in his book had a 9-word sentence that just said very simply, if you do not have an admin, you are one. And then you read that sentence and apply it and really understand what that means.
I love it. Yeah.
Oh, so strong. And that really was a major hit for me when I was on my own initially 10 years ago, 11 years ago. So, okay, so now we talked about your sales, your marketing. Another element is your personnel. We talked about that, your team. Let's talk about your operations. So from the operations side, CRM, do you do anything like that?
Yeah, of course. You can't do business without that stuff.
You'd be amazed how many people do.
And it's interesting because you used the word practice a few times. I personally don't believe I have a practice. I believe I have a business.
Okay.
And there is a difference. And I have built something that eventually could be sold to someone else because I've learned how to transfer my knowledge in different ways. That's another conversation. But
no,
anyway,
we're going to talk about that so people can get access to your information. Absolutely. I love the idea of practice versus business. I hear what you're saying. I love it. Okay, so now the last but not least, finance. So do you have an accounting team? Do you own the books on your own? Does your spouse do it? How do you all do that?
My dad used to do it years ago. He was a statistician, and it was funny because he was retired when he was doing my books. And, he was reconciling my checkbook, and that was in a different time where you're not using QuickBooks and all the other tools they have now. But he'd spend a week just trying to find a penny. No, I have an accounting team and a bookkeeping service, and they're all housed under the same accounting firm. And they do almost all of that. I do just a little piece here and there, but I mostly just turn it over to them and they do it for me, and they get it right because that's not one of my superpowers. I pay attention. We're ultimately always responsible for that, but we have a team to do that.
Yeah, I love it. And so again, folks, if you're listening to this, the delegation of things that, as we preach at Massimo, think about it. Find more talented people to do the things that you cannot do as well. And guess what? You can pay them less than what you're worth. And then you see the margin really hit home.
Yeah, no question about that.
Okay. So Bill, before we let you go, and this is an incredible episode of the Massimo Show. You give us so much value today. How do our listeners engage with you? Let's talk first about your books. Just reinforce the books. How can I get to them?
First of all, before I even get to that, I do have a free report for anybody listening and wants to just get something for free. Just go to multiplyourbestclients.com, multiplyourbestclients.com. And there's a 5 steps guide that I think you'll find helpful, reiterate some of the things we talked about here and then some. My two main books that I think you might be interested in would be Beyond Referrals, which is unavailable at Amazon, Beyond Referrals, and then my newest book, Radical Relevance. And if you really want to dive and learn more about that, just radicalrelevancebook.com. And then my main website is referralcoach.com. Those are how you reach me, and I'm happy to be a resource for you any way I can. Shoot me an email, ask me a question. I'm here for you.
So, Bill, awesome books. I love that. Multiplyourbestclients.com. I'm sure everyone's going to that right now. But what else is there? Is there coaching, speaking, training? Help us out.
Yeah. I mean, we have an online and video-based academy. So some people will learn our system through that. Some people will do that in conjunction with a coaching program. Anybody that I coach and consult with, they usually use the video-based program too, just to get up to speed with my basic principles and system. And then so our coaching is actually more efficient when we do that. And yeah, firms bring me in to speak and consult at different levels. So it's pretty much soup to nuts in terms of how I can help an individual or a solopreneur and someone who works within a large company bring me in for a conference to speak, et cetera. So all of that.
Well, Bill, I cannot thank you enough for your insight and your wisdom and sharing with our audience. Look, it's not hard. There's a process to go out and build your sales, grow your business without increasing your costs. And you have the process. Mr. Bill Cates, thank you so much for your time at the Massimo Show. And everyone else, don't forget, let's keep on moving forward. And any questions, comments, or more importantly, please share this podcast because I can tell you, your colleagues, your friends, they too want to grow their business and they love to do it without expending their marketing costs. Until next time, this is Rod Santomassimo with the Massimo Group and the Massimo Show. I want to thank you for listening to this version of the Massimo Show. And please go out and share this with your friends, your colleagues. Heck, share it with your dog. Just share it. And more importantly, just give me some feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. We all grow from understanding what our audience wants to hear. So until next time, this is Rod Santomassimo with the Massimo Show. Hi, this is Rod Santomassimo, president and founder of the Massimo Group. And did you know that for over the past 11 plus years, we've worked with thousands of independent contractors, solopreneurs, and small business owners just like you in repositioning their and/or their team's efforts so they can build the personal, professional practice they've always dreamed of. We provide coaching programs for all levels of experience, earnings, and yes, success. So if you're finally ready to get off that transaction treadmill and chasing deals that are growing nowhere and start building the personal, professional business and life consisting of greater wealth and more time, well, check us out at Massimo.coach. That's Massimo.coach.